Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. This is the first of a series of webinars, and we're starting with Google Meet. It's called Live Lessons Learned. This is based on everything we've learned from embarking on live lessons. It feels a while ago now. Hopefully it'll be of use to you. Certainly if you're starting to start and begin that journey, I'm sure it will. I'm Andrew Pridmore. I'm head teacher here at Elizabeth Woodville Primary School. We're one of many demonstrator schools across the country, and I'll just introduce the panel that will be working with me today and sharing this with you. So we've got Sarah Crowhurst, who is our Edtech project lead, and James Crowhurst, who's my lead practitioner for the Edtech project. They are married, so yeah, we are following all social distancing rules. I'll note that right from the start. And fitting on one screen as well, which is great work there, James and Sarah, super. Also, we have Lisa Rathbone with us. Lisa's our Year 1 teacher. And Lisa, you had the first experience of this because you had one of our first isolation periods at Elizabeth Woodville.
Yes, back in October.
But all went well, and it was really a useful proving ground for a lot of the strategies that we found work and we'll be sharing with you this afternoon. So yes, thank you very much for joining us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Please, in the chat, if you want to ask us anything at all, please pop comments in there. There is also at the bottom of the screen, you'll see it says ask a question. If you click on that, you can actually load a question into there as well, type one in, and we will have a Q&A session where we'll get back to as many of the questions as we can, so please keep them coming. And if there's anything you need help with, that's what the chat's there for, and we'll be engaging with that throughout the presentation. So yes, thank you very much for joining us. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with talking to you about how we set up Google Meet for live lessons and the various ways that you can do it. Because we found if you've got the settings right, if you get all those technical aspects in place, it's a much smoother ride right from the beginning. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah and James, and they're going to start us off just by talking about those settings, those things that you need to do right at the start to start in a successful way.
Hi, yeah. So if you are setting up a Google Meet, if you already use Google Classroom, then this is what you need to do. So it's quite seamless if you're already using Google Classroom because the children are logging in already. So all you need to do is go to the cog in the top right-hand corner of your classroom and scroll down and make sure that you toggle on the Google Meet link in your classroom settings. That's the first thing to do. And then the code will appear in the Pupils Google Classroom, and it will be in yours as well, but with a little camera icon. Now, normally in the teacher view, you'd have an eye that's crossed out, and you'll know that it's working in live because the little camera icon will appear. Now, as long as the settings are okay, which we'll talk about in just a minute in the admin portal, then the pupils will not be allowed to join until a teacher is present. So they'll be able to click that link, but an error message will appear.
The next bit we will look at is how we set up a Google Meet outside of Google Classroom. So we know not everyone is using Google Classroom, and that's absolutely fine, but you might want to use Google Meet to run live lessons yourselves. So we can do that quite easily by going to meet.google.com. When you go to meet.google.com and you are signed in as you as a teacher, then you can press the join or start a meeting button. When you press that join or start a meeting button, it asks you for a name for your event. So we just tend to give ours a lesson name, and then you can press the continue button. When you press the continue button, it then takes you through getting ready to actually go into the meeting. So you can make your camera off, you can turn your mic off, or you can have your camera on and change your background settings, etc. in there. And then you can press the join now button. So when you press the join now button, it takes you straight into the meeting, and it pops up with a screen that allows you to copy the joining info. So if you then copy the joining info by pressing that copy joining info button, you can then paste that as a message or as an assignment or activity into any LMS or learning management system that you are using with your pupils. And then the pupils will be able to see it in their system, and they'll be able to click on it and join the meeting. So we say it's best to do this at the time that you're going to start the meeting. So you tell the children, we're going to be meeting at 10 o'clock today, and then you set this up about 5 to 10, put the meeting link in there at the time when it's ready to go live at 10 o'clock with the children. There are some host controls that you'll want to set before you assign or send a message to the children in your learning management system. So we're going to have a look at those now. So in our host controls, there's only a few host controls, and there's not many for you to worry about, but they do change your experience and make it much easier for you. So when you're in a meeting, at the bottom left-hand corner, you get the little blue shield. So that little blue shield is the host controls. If you're the first person in the meeting, or you're the person who creates the meeting, then you're the person who has those host controls. When you press the host controls, you get the option to turn off quick access. So as you can see on the screen on the left-hand side, we've got the meeting safety section in there. We've got quick access, and it's turned off. So when that's turned off, that means that anyone who's come into the meeting, whether they're invited or not, they have to be allowed in by you. So that means you have to admit them. So it's like creating the waiting room, basically. Then you can also turn off shared screen. So that means the children can't share their screen in the meeting, which is quite useful. And if you want to, you can turn off the chat messaging function as well. It's up to you with those two. Sometimes you might want the children to share the screen so they can share the brilliant work that they've been up to at home. Sometimes you want the chat open so they can ask questions. It's entirely up to you, but that's how you can turn it on and off. There are some further settings as well that you can look at. So at the bottom right-hand corner of the meeting screen, you get the 3 dots. When you press on that, you get this menu that pops up that you can see on our screen on the left-hand side. One of the features in there is record meeting, and record meeting is only available if it's turned on in your admin console, and we'll talk about the admin console in a second. But you can also change your layout in here, which means you can make it tiled view, and you can see up to 49 children on the screen at one time. You can change your background again, and you can turn on captions, which is means that if children are having trouble with their sound, they'll be able to read what you're saying. It in real time transcribes what you are saying and puts it on the screen for the children to see. And it's pretty accurate. We found it to be very useful. One final thing, a pretty new tool in Google Meet down at the bottom on that list is troubleshooting and help. In there, the children or yourself can troubleshoot your mic issues or your camera issues. And there's also now a networking feature, so you can see if there's any issues with your internet or anything to do with using Google Meet as well. So there's just a few of the important settings that we like to throw at you for when you do your meetings. But there's also the admin console for doing some settings in the background. And the admin console is very important.
Yeah, so some of these settings are going to change your experience. So when we go through them in just a minute, what these settings will do is stop the children from making their own Google Meets. So they're not making them and chatting to their friends outside of your control. And it also stops the children from joining, as I mentioned previously about the Google Classroom link, without a teacher present first.
So in the admin console, you get the option to go to apps. And when you go into apps, you get all the different apps that are available to you in Google for education. And one of them is Google Meet. And then in Google Meet, you can turn that on and off for different people. It's important it's actually turned on for pupils and for staff, because otherwise pupils will not be able to join meetings at all. So it's important it's turned on for everyone. But then once you go into Google Meet, there's further settings called Meet Video Settings. And on the bottom of those settings, there is an option called video calling. If you turn that off, as you can see on our screen now in our screenshots, if you turn that off, then that stops the children from creating their own calls. So it means they can join them, but they cannot make their own. And that's the really important bit in the admin console.
Yeah, so when we've been working with schools as part of the Edtech Demonstrator Programme, we've come up with a few common issues. So first of all, the children haven't been set up properly in the organisational groups in admin. All of the users have been imported in one massive list. So the pupils and the staff are not separated, so you can't give the right settings to the right groups. Or Meeting itself is toggled off for pupils in the admin console. Meet needs to be on, but the video calling in the Meet settings, as James has just said, needs to be off. We also toggle off in the settings, they let people record their meetings for the pupils only. So that means the pupils can't be recording your sessions.
They're just some of the common issues that we came across as we were doing it, and with other schools that we've been supporting as well. One of the other things that you can do in the Google Admin Console is you can set it so that children can join your Google Meet sessions without having to have a Google account. So if you're using G Suite for Education for your staff and you're not using Google Classroom, you're using a different learning management system, maybe Tapestry, Seesaw, things like that, or half of your school's using a different learning management system, but you want to use Google Meet for your sessions, then you can request anonymous access for Google Meet. So what that does is it means that any Google Meet session that's been created by you as a G Suite for Education user can be accessed by anyone within who's got the link. But obviously, because you've done the quick access and turned that off and created the waiting room, then that stops anyone from joining the meeting without you admitting them. So all you have to do is talk to Google through the admin console. So you go onto the admin console and press the little question mark at the top right hand corner. You press the contact support button at the bottom, like on my screen on the left hand side. And then it comes up, how do you want to talk to us? And you can choose chat, phone, or email. I always just use chat. And when you go on the chat facility, ask what you want to chat to us about. So I just say, request anonymous access for Google Meet, please. And one of the Google representatives will talk to you and they'll say, yeah, no problem. They request the access for you. And it normally takes about 24 to 48 hours. It can take up to 72, they say, but then it's done, and your children can then, when they join your meeting, they get a screen that pops up asking for them to type in their name. So they can type in their name and then join the meeting, and that's worked really well for our younger children who aren't using the Google Classroom, so they can access our Google Meet live sessions. And that's all the bit that's about setting it up. So we're now going to talk about pupil expectations, and we're going to hand back over to Andrew and Lisa to talk to you about these.
So hopefully that's given you a really good overview. Thank you, Sarah and James, about settings. And I think if you get the settings right from the outset, it really works. But also, Lisa, setting the expectations and just supporting families in what to expect when we're embarking on live lessons is really crucial, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So we'll have a look. We've got a few just quick pointers that we think will be helpful on the next page. And so one of those is thinking about a shared space. So making sure that when you're presenting, you've got a shared space within the family home that people are using. And that really helps because obviously with younger children, particularly in year one, like your class, Lisa, it's nice to have a parent standing by if needed, particularly at the start of lessons.
Yeah, just on things like when you're asking a child to unmute themselves at the beginning, they don't know how to, especially in year one, they're not sure how to use the unmute mute feature on Google Meet. So just having that parent by you that can help. Also, for if the parents have got any questions that they want to ask right at the end, they can listen in and they can hear what you're saying. It's really helpful to have that parent standing with the child.
So on the next slide, there are a range of pointers. Hopefully that will come around in a moment. You'll be able to see it. But we talk a lot about safety and safeguarding. And one of the aspects that we look at there is things like reminding parents about backgrounds. Just be aware that the microphone, the camera can pick up a lot of ambient sound and background. So you're just making sure they're safe and they're clear. people walking around in the backgrounds as well, really crucial. But what we do as a school, as you've seen already, we're admitting pupils in. So we have a moderator, someone who's there in the background to assist the teacher, because very quickly we realised it's quite a challenge, isn't it, Lisa? Because you're actually teaching as normal, yet you've got all this tech to manage at the same time. So actually having somebody as a moderator in the background who can really help you has been really useful, hasn't it?
Yeah, it just takes the pressure off yourself, and you're able then just to focus on the teaching, focus on the children, focus on your job, and you haven't got to worry about letting people in, or people having problems with connecting, or people having problems with the mute button and hearing us. So it just takes that pressure off.
I think it's useful and it's crucial. I mean, one of the things is we've solved a lot of tech issues early on in the chat just by having somebody there, haven't we? And it really helps. We talk about as well on entry, having the children muting their microphones. And I think you've got a really good system for admitting them that works well, but then starts in it where everybody's muted. So do you want to take us through how you start a lesson and what you do?
Yeah, so the good thing with Google Meet is that you can either let everybody come in all in one go, so that nobody can come in until you press allow access, and then you can either allow access for all of the people that are already in that waiting room for you, or you can access them one at a time, which I tend to do that, and it just gives me that time to tick my register so that I know that who's in and who's not, which helps me then if I'm asking questions, I can say, oh, such and such, do you want to answer this one, so I don't miss anybody out. But it also kind of, yeah, it just allows me to take that opportunity to say hello to everybody, to greet everybody. So even if they haven't answered a question during my live lesson, they've still had a bit of communication with me, which I think is vital, especially we're in week 5 now of not seeing the children. Probably it's 7 weeks since we've seen them, since before Christmas. So just having that, even a couple of seconds to say hello, how are you, I think is so precious at the moment.
I think it's worth taking a question. Thank you, Rachel, in the chat for your question. What you have is Lisa would be the organizer for the session. So all of the teachers are able to mute people if they need to. And that does work really well. You can't actually unmute them. So that can be a challenge if that isn't nearby. We found that very early on, haven't we, Lisa?
Yeah, so the children, yeah, you can mute them, which is fantastic. I have actually used it a few times, especially in the beginning where everybody just wanted to kind of speak and share their answers and things. They have quickly stopped this, and they use the hands up feature, which even in year 1, it's worked fantastically well, that they can put their hand up now and they don't mute until you ask them. But yeah, you can mute children, but you just can't unmute them. So that's where that parent comes really useful, because especially at the beginning when they don't quite know how to unmute themselves, that person can be there.
And I think parents, once they see how it works as well, they get used to it. They don't need to be there for the, all of the sessions in the area, so they can assist when needed. And knowing there's a moderator as well, that's really helpful. So if the teacher's in full flow, doing some modelling, the parent has an issue, they can pop it in the chat and they know that there's somebody there to support them. And I think that really works well. So they're the things that we would say. I mean, be mindful of the chat. If you've got a moderator, we, at times we'll say don't use the chat. Sometimes we're quite happy if they're going to say hello in there, but very quickly they only use the chat for that hello and goodbye unless instructed by a teacher. That's really, really key. But the fact that you've got a teacher who's moderating or a member of staff moderating really, really helps. So shall we move on to the next slide? I think that covers the main sort of setting of expectations and rules, and I think it really helps families when they know what to expect. We will pick as many questions up as we go through as well, so please keep asking them if you think of anything. So we'll move on to technical tips. This is something that we found just helps parents. You've heard Sarah and James talk about settings. We've found this has solved probably 99% of all the issues we've had with parents logging into Google Meet. First off, we always say use Google Chrome. It tends to eliminate issues. And often if they can't access, it's because there's a conflict with another Google account that the family has, maybe an adult one. If they go up to File at the top and then click on Incognito mode and put in the address for the meeting, they can actually just get a pop-up where they can put the child's name in. And of course, it's actually very safe for us, because when they come in, we have to admit them. So seeing the child's first name or the initial of their surname for identification purposes really helps us. It's where we don't have that, where it's a little bit trickier. But I think in that case, Lisa, the moderator has obviously quickly found who that person is. And if there are any issues, obviously we wouldn't admit. We make some phone calls. But it's always worked very effectively, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think we've had one or two right at the beginning that it's come up as unknown, or it's just like the surname that we can't quite guess because it might be on grandparents' iPads because they're with the grandparents and things. But a quick phone call to home kind of rectifies that, and we know who it is. So it's so easy to change and manage.
We talk about not duplicating for parents. Don't sort of click the present now button, because if you do that, you're in twice. Don't keep trying to join if you're in already. It's just taking that time. And one of the biggest ones was realizing that if you go in early, you sit in the lobby and it looks like nothing's happening. So for a start, you could think, oh no, I'm in the wrong place, it's not working. But actually, it's just waiting for the teacher to admit you. But as soon as you've been through that once or twice, that all becomes clear, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, they wait now, and they know that the tutors will be on it soon, and it's usually at 15:15 we log in, and then we can start admitting people. But it does take a while because I do it one at a time. It does take a minute or two to get down to the parents, but they're used to that now. They know that I do like a register kind of thing right at the start, and they know to wait their turn.
It works really well. And Lisa is the organizer, so we've had a question as well, just about follow-up about if you're the organizer and you've met and set the meeting up, how do you make sure another teacher has those rights? So if you're the organizer, you just click on the meeting, the 3 dots, and you can actually change the organizer and you can give it to somebody else. And that really worked quite effectively, didn't it? That's what we've done. We had admin that set all the meetings up. The organizer was then changed. I think, Lisa, just an email came through to you, didn't it, just to accept that? And then it's
literally an email that says, do you want to accept the organisation rights? You click on it and then it changes it automatically. You literally tick a yes in the email and then it orders it all for you. It's really easy.
Brilliant. But if you want to, we can do a follow-up on that a little bit later. But yeah, once it's all set up and you duplicate those meetings that are happening every week, it's perfect. It takes the worry out of it, definitely. Right, we'll move on to the next bit. So what we're going to do now is we're going to again talk about the technical aspects to setting up, because there's a range of ways that you can set up these meetings. When we embarked on live lessons, what was really key for us is that we made them as interactive as possible. So you'll see that these different possibilities really are for you to be able to interact as well as possible with the pupils and emulate the classroom experience as far as possible virtually. So Sarah and James are going to come back now, talk you through that. And then we're going to come and hopefully show you a live demo of how we run it in action. So Sarah, James, over to you.
Thank you. So we're just going to talk a little bit about presenting your screen, because there's a few different ways that you can do it, and we'll talk about how we found it to work best. So to present your screen in Google Meet, you just go to the Present Now button at the bottom right-hand corner. And then you get 3 options. So you can present your entire screen, you can present a window, or you can present a tab. We've found that presenting a window or presenting your entire screen is the best option. The main reason behind that is because if you click on something that pops up something else, then you won't be able to show that to the children unless you stop presenting and re-present. Or if you want to flick between different programs, then presenting your entire screen is the only option, unless you stop presenting and then re-present again. So it's quite important to choose the option you want on here. If you're just showing a video, say off YouTube, and that's all you're going to show for the session, then a tab is okay. And as it says on there, a tab is best for video and animation. So it just make it a little bit smoother for doing the video. But if you're showing a video and then wanted to go into a PowerPoint or something like that, then obviously you're either going to have to stop presenting, or best option is just to do the entire screen, because then they can see everything. Just word of warning, if you are doing entire screen, they can see everything. So if you've got a background in there that's not necessarily appropriate for the children to see, then obviously you need to change your background. Don't have your emails open. Lots of little things to think about around that. So I would suggest the best way to do it is just to start nice and simple and just have a go at presenting like your PowerPoint. And you can do that by presenting a window. And if you wanted to try it out beforehand with a colleague, so that they can see what you're presenting and you can see how it looks from your point of view, then that's a really good way to try it out. Lots of schools have had a go at doing it that way. When the first time they've presented the screen, they've actually just created a meeting between themselves and a colleague in the school, and then had a go at presenting the screen and tried it out and played with it. And that's worked really well for them. So they're not going in cold when they're doing it with the children. One of the things that we did find, though, when we're presenting on Google Meet is obviously if you want to interact with your PowerPoint or move on to the next slide or change anything, then you can't see what's going on in your Google Meet session. So one of the ways around that is we decided that we could use split screen. So that means that we put our Google Meet on one side of our screen and we put our presentation on the other side of the screen. You can just do that by dragging the windows to the side of the screen, and they'll snap onto the side if you're on a Windows device, or you can use the little green icon, which is the full screen icon on a Mac, to make it full screen. And then you're able to see your Google Meet session on one side and your presentation and interact with your presentation on the other side. And we've found that to be really helpful. But then we also wanted to take it another step further. So we wanted to be able to actually model things and make it look how it would in the classroom when you're using your whiteboard. So then we introduced the idea of using a second screen, and all our teachers have got iPads, so they've been using their iPad as a second screen. They've got Google Meet on it. They just join the meeting and choose the present option. And when they do that, they are then in the meeting with their screen of their iPad. So everything that's on the iPad can be seen by the children. So if you're not in the app at the start, then obviously the children will see your different apps. If you have notifications turned on, then obviously the children will see any notifications coming through. So just think about those few little things before you start your session in there. And then the other things to think about are the apps that you want to use. And this is where we're going to go live and with a Google Meet session, and Lisa is going to show you how she's used Jamboard and how she's used Keynote to be able to present and show her lessons. So at this point, I just need to actually stop presenting my screen and present the Google Meet session, and fingers crossed the technology works for us.
Yeah, so hopefully this one will all work out. James is going to do the magic in the background while Lisa and I take you through how we came up with this, really. I think, Lisa, when we were thinking about this, we wanted to emulate the classroom. We wanted it to give you as much interactivity with your pupils as possible, didn't we?
Yeah, so it was when I had to self-isolate back in October. So I couldn't come to school. I couldn't use a visualizer. I couldn't use my whiteboard, which in year one we use modeling so much. And it was kind of, how am I going to create lessons as good as what I can in the classroom at home with just my laptop and my iPad? And this was a really good way of kind of having that to show the children.
So we're going to try and model a Jamboard first, and the great thing about Jamboard, its versatility means you can do everything you could do on your interactive touchscreen, and we're going to call one up now and just see if we can bring that up and show you a little bit about how it works. It's just so crucial for modelling, isn't it, and very versatile.
Yeah, so I tended to use my Jamboard for my maths lessons because I could show the children how I wanted it to be modelled. I could show them how I wanted it to be laid out, and I could just talk through my lessons. So it's literally just like the notes section where you can write things down. So, for example, I would, in my maths lesson, if we were doing subtraction, I would talk to the children and I'd say, oh, what number is that? And I could see, because I'm working on my iPad, I can see the children in my laptop, and I could ask them to put their fingers up and say, how many is this worth? And you've just got that constant interaction between yourself and the children as you are modelling at the same time, which I think is so crucial, especially in year one and the younger years, to just keep them engaged and keep asking them questions and them know that you can see them. So if I was writing a number sentence like 34 take away 6, I would write that number sentence out. I can then explain to the children that we look at how many 10s is in a number, how many 1s we can see in a number, so that we can work out the answer. But I can talk myself through the lesson as I'm doing it, which I think is fantastic. The children can work through it with me, so I could do a step of the maths problem, and I get them to hold their whiteboards up to see if they've copied it right. And it's just that you can keep going back from your whiteboard to your screen where you can see all of these children, that I think is just invaluable. You just need that so much, to be able to have that connection. It's just like they're in the classroom. It's just like they're on the carpet with you. You can see their boards. You can see where somebody's gone wrong. You can see if they've got the number wrong all the time, doing your modelling on your lesson as well, which I think is brilliant.
And we mentioned as well that low-tech solution of, while they're working on pieces of paper, pen and paper, they can hold it up to the screen. You're getting an ongoing assessment, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. Sure.
It just works. And so it's very simple. Laptop setup, iPad for the modelling, works really well. And it doesn't just work with maths, it works when you're presenting. Because one of the issues with Google Meet that we've found, isn't it, Lisa, is where you're presenting, but you lose part of your screen. You can't see it in the same way. So I think you've got a way of showing us to present during the iPad, using the iPad.
Yep. So using the Keynote feature, which I think is really good, because you can click onto your PowerPoints. You don't lose the formats. That I find that sometimes if you go into Google Slides and open something on a Google Slide on your iPad, sometimes the images go distorted, sometimes the writing goes over the images, whereas Keynote tends not to do that. And you've still got your PowerPoint, so you can flick through your PowerPoints, you can play the PowerPoint and quickly flick through them, which is fantastic. You can write on them using your pens, and it's so versatile and easy, and a great way to kind of have that PowerPoint in front of you and talk through that PowerPoint, but still always see the children at the same time, which you definitely need.
And I think the thing that we say as well is ease of use and easy to pick up and play. I mean, how hard would you say it was for you just to pick that up for the first few lessons?
Really easy, so simple. I think I didn't sleep the first night worrying about it, but literally going through it on that first day, and it's really not that hard, and it's just second nature, and it's so easy because we save everything on Google Drive anyway, so everything's already up there if you needed to do it, and you just open it onto a Keynote. It's up, it's there. You haven't got to think of creating any new resources. It's all the same resources that you had already, so there's no extra work there, and you're literally just teaching. Instead of standing in front of a whiteboard, you're sitting and using your stylus and your iPad's your whiteboard.
And it works. And I think it is really hard. We know how hard this is for teachers right now. We know how hard it is for parents, but actually once you get that success, and you just feel like you've got that interaction, don't you? You've got that connection with your class. That's what we really want. We want children back in school, and if we can't have that at the moment, I think this is the next best thing.
Definitely. Well, we're 5 weeks in, and I've got over 90% every single day of children turning up to live lessons. They're always coming, and if they can't come, they're apologising, and it's usually because one of the parents is working and needs the technology at the same time. So it 5 weeks in, and they're still using it. They're still engaged. They're still coming back every day for another live lesson. Brilliant.
Great to hear. So I think we'll bring James and Sarah back in at this point. And it was great that we got a chance to share that with you. So I think it's really key just to see how it works. There's lots of different ways of doing it. I mean, James has shown you the split screen approach. We have had a question as well about the split screen approach. James, do you want to answer that now? Is that worthwhile?
Yeah, no, I can pick up on that now. Absolutely, yeah, it's absolutely fine. So basically, if you are presenting full screen and presenting your entire screen, they will see the split screen. So it only works doing the split screen if you're presenting the window. This is where you've got all those different options that are available to you, and it's kind of like thinking about which one works best for you and how you want it to work. And that's one of the other reasons why we decided to utilize a second screen as well, because then you've got the ability to use the stylus, you've got the ability to jump between different apps, but then you see you've got that option to be able to keep seeing the children on the screen at all times. So yeah, if you're going to split screen, then it's going to have to be a window or a tab in there. But then that tab would need to be separate from your Google Meet window tabs, and it gets a bit complicated. So just go with the window option.
There you go. Advice there. Brilliant. Thank you, James. Just to say, Lisa, thank you so much for that. It's great to see your perspective. And when we were looking at those options, I think that was the one that you felt suited you best.
It was just so easy, like you say, it's so easy to pick up. It's not a lot different from being in the classroom. You're still using your inputs, you're still using your PowerPoints, you're still modeling to the children, and you can still see the children, you can see their reactions, you can pick up on the misconceptions, you can assess their learning, and it's very simple for a teacher to be able to use it and concentrate on the teaching side of it rather than a technology side to it.
Brilliant. So I think it's probably time for question and answers. Thank you very much, Lisa, for your input there. Thank you, Sarah and James. Sarah, you've been having a look at, we've got a couple of questions, I think.
Yeah, so we've got another one talking about the admin rights. So does only one adult have the admin rights? And that's the case, isn't it, James?
Yeah. So when you create a meeting, it's the person who creates the meeting who's got the admin rights. So as Andrew said earlier, if you are scheduling a meeting using your Google Calendar, then you can change the organizer of the meeting. But if you create it by going to meet.google.com, how I mentioned earlier on, then you can't change the organizer because you're creating it as an instant meeting. But if you were to schedule them ahead of time, then using the calendar, then yes, you can change the rights of who has got access to which one. But if you're doing Google Classroom, then in Google Classroom, it's the person who accesses the meeting first, the teacher who accesses the meeting first, who will have those admin rights. So there's just a few little things. There are a few little things with Google Meet that you kind of have to know about in the background. They're not very kind of well known, really, it would also be, it's also important if you want to change those meeting rights, you need to basically, in Google Classroom, generate a new link from the settings menu. If you're doing it through a scheduled meeting through the calendar, which is one of the options which I didn't show you because it's another complicated way of doing it. And then you have to go and change the organizer of the whole event. If you are just creating it through meet.google.com, then it's the person who creates the meeting who's the organizer, and that's that. So just make sure that person is the person who creates the meeting organizer. I think it would be useful if you can have more than one person with admin rights, to be honest. But it's one of those features that's not there, unfortunately, in Google Meet. If you've got any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We have just had another one come through.
So the meeting volume was so loud. Bless you, Jenny. Can you change the volume? So is
that the meeting volume when you're using Google Meet, I assume? So the volume would just be based on the volume on your device. So you would have to turn your volume up and down on your device, or the children would have to turn their volume up and down on their device. It's just a standard way of using the volumes within your device that you're using. There's no way to control the volume within Google Meet. You can only control the mic in Google Meet, unfortunately.
Would that depend also on the person's microphone that was talking that was loud, if their microphone settings are different?
Yeah, so yeah, if microphones are turned up to a high level, so they're boosted, then that could make the person a bit louder as well. But generally, the best way of sorting it out is by using the volume settings on the actual device.
Great stuff, lovely. Thank you. We'll just have a last look, see if there's any other questions before we move to finishing the meeting and just show you what's coming up in our webinar next week. Any others? Thanks. I think, well, we will be around for a few minutes afterwards. If you want to ask a question, then please stay in the chat and ask away. So yes, we are part of the Edtech Demonstrator Schools and Colleges Programme. And this is running for another 6 weeks, just 6 weeks only before it finishes. So there is still time. If you haven't had support, if perhaps you want to embark on live lessons for the first time, you can get up to 6 weeks of support. We can support you through every step of the way. There are other demonstrators available as well, and they'll be matched to your needs. So if you'd like some support and get involved with the programme, now is the time. As I say, this is the last 6 weeks now, so please go to that link there. We'll pop that in the chat as well, or if you just search Edtech Demonstrator, you will be able to find the website. Top right of the website, you just click request support, and if you want to be matched to Elizabeth Woodville, just write that in the any other information section as well, and we'd be delighted to work with you. It's great as well. It must be said, Sarah, to see so many of the schools that we've worked with and collaborated with here.
I can see so many familiar names, and I hope you're all doing okay.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. We've learned so much from working with you. I hope it's all going well. But if you do need us, please email away. We'll help in any way we can. And it'd be great to see you at our weekly webinar series. So our next one, we're going to be looking at how you keep pupils engaged. And we're going to be showing a range of interactive quizzes with Google Forms. Some templates, some great templates that will be of real use, universal use across your schools. But we have a special guest as well. Do you want to introduce, Sarah, our special guest?
Yeah, so this is Mrs. P, otherwise known as Amy. She works in one of our local schools, and she is so happy with using Google Forms. She's used them for so many different things, so many different lessons. So she's going to come along and show us all of her different ways that she's used Google Forms for her class.
So yeah, so we trained Amy on how to use Google Forms initially. She wouldn't say she's the most tech savvy person, but she's really ran with it and loving it. So she's going to show off what she's done with that. So yeah.
Yeah, so many ready to use ideas and templates there. Definitely one not to miss. And so yeah, it's a Wednesday, not Tuesday. So Wednesday next week, same time though, 3:45. Hopefully we'll see you there. You can always catch a replay on Crowdcast as long as you sign up for it. They're always there for you. So thank you very much for joining us. Just to finish from us, as we move on to that last slide, just to say a big thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. Please hang around if you want to ask any questions. Thank you to Lisa. Brilliant, just to get that classroom input and just seeing it, how these things work. It's all good as coming up with these ideas, but actually it's the teachers that the chalk face, or the virtual chalk face as it is, that tell us, do our ideas actually work? Thank you very, very much for your input today.
Thank you.
And James and Sarah, thank you as well, as always, steering us through those technical waters to make it run smooth. Thanks very, very much for all of you. Any questions, we'll hang around for a few minutes. Thank you very much. We look forward to hopefully working with some of you on the Edtech Demonstrator Programme, and at the very least, seeing you next week. Thanks. Have a good rest of the week, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you've got a question, feel free to type it away. We're not going to run away just yet. You can see there's still about 3 of you left. Probably 2 people left now.
Yeah, that's
yes,
absolutely
Jenny.
fine, Jenny. Of course you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to share away, no problem. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Let's see if
it's just Nicola.
Just Nicola's left. I hope you're doing okay, Nicola.
she's not there.
I don't know whether you've had to disappear. We'll just give you a minute in case you're typing away.
Yeah.
If not, then we'll end the session. No, I think we'll end it there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.